In the vast expanse of the galaxy, countless civilizations thrived under the watchful eye of the Galactic Council. For eons, the Council maintained peace and order, with member species collaborating to advance their collective knowledge and technology. Each species brought unique strengths to the table, but all agreed that progress was best achieved through cooperation, not conflict. Earth had only recently made contact with the intergalactic community. As newcomers, humans were eager to prove themselves worthy of a seat on the Council. They marveled at the advanced technologies possessed by other species, faster than light travel, energy shields, and weapons that could vaporize entire moons. In comparison, human technology seemed primitive and laughable. The day finally came for Earth's delegates to present to the Council. Ambassador Jack Stevens, Captain Maya Torres, and Dr. Liam Gupta arrived at the towering citadel that served as Council headquarters. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors milled about. Insectoids chittering in untranslatable languages, tentacled creatures sliding across polished floors, and sentient gas clouds floating overhead. The humans felt out of their depth, but steeled themselves for what was to come. In the grand auditorium, the Council convened to discuss the latest developments in galactic affairs. The human delegation waited patiently for their turn to speak. Finally, the booming voice of the Council leader, a purple-skinned giant named Zorax, called them forward. "Esteemed Council members," began Ambassador Stevens, his voice amplified by the room's advanced acoustics. "We come to you today as representatives of Earth, a planet on the verge of intergalactic integration. We seek to contribute to the Council's noble pursuits and learn from your vast wisdom." Murmurs rippled through the auditorium as Stevens spoke. Some Council members looked intrigued, while others appeared bored or dismissive. Captain Torres stepped forward, her crisp uniform drawing attention. "As a show of goodwill and transparency, we would like to present an overview of Earth's defensive capabilities." She activated a holographic display, showcasing a variety of human weapons, missiles, tanks, fighter jets, and more. The Council watched with mild interest as Torres explained the specifications of each item. Suddenly, an insectoid counselor spoke up, its mandibles clicking in amusement. "These are your planet's most advanced weapons. They seem so quaint." Laughter echoed through the auditorium as other Council members joined in the mockery. Dr. Gupta frowned, stepping forward to interject, but Ambassador Stevens placed a warning hand on his shoulder. "I assure you," Stevens said diplomatically, "Earth's weapons are quite formidable. We simply believe in maintaining a strong defense to protect our people." "Protect them from what?" scoffed a tentacled counselor. "Rocks and sticks. Your weapons wouldn't last a millisecond against a Zorgax plasma cannon." More laughter erupted from the Council. The human delegation stood their ground, but inside they seethed at the disrespect. These supposed advanced beings had no idea of the destructive power humans had mastered. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order," suggested Dr. Gupta, a dangerous edge to his voice. But Captain Torres shook her head. "That won't be necessary, Doctor," she said firmly. Turning back to the Council, she continued, "We appreciate your feedback on our current weapons technology. Earth is always seeking to improve its defenses. In the spirit of cooperation, we would be grateful for any insights you could share to help us advance." Her diplomatic words did little to sway the guffawing counselors. Ambassador Stevens realized this presentation had been a mistake. The Council was too arrogant to take humans seriously. Not yet, anyway. As the delegation filed out of the auditorium, Captain Torres muttered under her breath, "They'll regret underestimating us. When the time comes, we'll show them what human ingenuity can really do." Little did any of them know that time would come sooner than expected. An ancient threat was stirring in the depths of the galaxy, one that would push the Council and the human race to their limits and beyond. The human delegation returned to their quarters, frustrated by the Council's dismissive attitude towards Earth's weapons technology. Ambassador Stevens paced the room, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need to find a way to earn their respect," he said, turning to his colleagues. If we can't contribute militarily, perhaps we can offer something else of value. Dr. Gupta nodded thoughtfully. Our scientific advancements in fields like medicine and environmental conservation are unparalleled. Maybe we could share some of that knowledge. Captain Torres shook her head. I don't think they're interested in anything we have to offer, at least not yet. They see us as primitive newcomers, not equals. As they discussed their options, an urgent message came through on their communication devices. It was from Earth's military command. A massive energy surge had been detected on the far reaches of the galaxy, unlike anything ever seen before. The delegation rushed to bring this information before the council. In the grand auditorium, they found the councilors already deep in a heated discussion. Zorax, the council leader, looked uncharacteristically concerned. Esteemed councilors, Ambassador Stevens called out, trying to be heard over the din. Earth has detected an unprecedented energy surge in the Zeta Quadrant. We believe it may be a threat to the entire galaxy. Silence fell over the auditorium as all eyes turned to the human delegation. Zorax leaned forward in his seat, his purple brow furrowed. The Zeta Quadrant, you say? That's impossible. Our long-range sensors have detected nothing unusual in that region. Dr. Gupta stepped forward, holding up a datapad. With all due respect, Counselor Zorax, our sensors are highly advanced. They've picked up an energy signature that defies all known technologies. We must investigate this potential threat. Murmurs rippled through the auditorium as the counselors debated the validity of the human claims. Many remained skeptical, convinced that the primitive Earthlings couldn't possibly have detection capabilities beyond their own. Suddenly, the insectoid counselor who had mocked human weapons spoke up, its mandibles clicking urgently. Counselors, I've just received word from my homeworld. Our outer colonies are under attack by an unknown enemy. Their weapons are like nothing we've ever seen. Panic erupted in the auditorium as more reports of attacks flooded in from other council species. It soon became clear that the energy surge detected by Earth was indeed a threat. An ancient malevolent force that had lain dormant for eons, now awakened and seeking to conquer the galaxy. Zorax turned to the human delegation, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by desperation. Ambassador Stevens, it seems we were wrong to underestimate Earth's capabilities. In light of this grave threat, we must put aside our differences and work together. What can your weapons do against this enemy? Captain Torres stepped forward, a glint of determination in her eyes. Counselor Zorax, the full extent of Earth's firepower has yet to be revealed. Give us a chance to fight alongside you, and we will show you what human ingenuity can achieve. Zorax nodded solemnly, realizing that the fate of the galaxy now rested on an unlikely alliance between the Galactic Council and the once-mocked humans. As the Council scrambled to mount a defense against the ancient enemy, Ambassador Stevens turned to his team, a grim smile on his face. It's time to show them what we're really made of. Earth will not stand idle while the galaxy burns. With a newfound sense of purpose, the human delegation prepared to join the fight, their weapons and resolve ready to be tested like never before. The true power of human firepower was about to be unleashed, and the galaxy would witness it in all its terrible glory. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of unity and progress, found itself in a state of chaos as the ancient enemy swept through the galaxy like a plague. The Council's mighty fleets, armed with the most advanced weapons known to their civilizations, were swatted aside like flies by the enemy's incomprehensible technology. As world after world fell to the onslaught, the Council grew increasingly desperate. They had always believed themselves to be the pinnacle of military might, but now they faced an adversary that made them look like children playing with toy soldiers. In the midst of this crisis, the human delegation worked tirelessly to prove their worth. Ambassador Stevens, Captain Torres, and Dr. Gupta pored over the limited data they had on the enemy, seeking any weakness they could exploit. Their weapons are unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. Gupta said, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. They seem to break the very laws of physics. Captain Torres nodded grimly. But every enemy has a weakness. We just need to find it. As the Council's forces suffered defeat after defeat, Zorax, the once proud leader, called the human delegation before him. His purple skin was ashen, his eyes haunted by the weight of his responsibility. Ambassador Stevens, he said, his voice trembling, we have underestimated your species greatly. In our arrogance, we dismissed your weapons as primitive. But now, in our darkest hour, we must turn to you for help. Stevens nodded solemnly. We understand, Counselor Zorax. Earth stands ready to fight alongside the Council, to defend the galaxy from this ancient threat. Zorax's shoulders sagged with relief, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Then let us waste no more time. What do you need from us to bring your weapons to bear against the enemy? Captain Torres stepped forward, a determined glint in her eye. We need access to your advanced technologies, your resources, and your manufacturing capabilities. With those, we can upgrade our weapons to a level that can match the enemy's firepower. Zorax hesitated for only a moment before nodding his assent. It shall be done. The Council will provide whatever you need. The fate of the galaxy is in your hands now, humans. With the full might of the Galactic Council behind them, the human delegation set to work. Dr. Gupta and his team of scientists worked day and night, integrating human weapons technology with the advanced systems of the Council races. Captain Torres oversaw the mass production of these upgraded weapons, her tactical genius ensuring that they were distributed efficiently to the front lines. Ambassador Stevens rallied the Council races, his impassioned speeches inspiring them to fight alongside the humans, united against a common foe. As the upgraded human weapons began to roll out onto the battlefield, the tide of the war began to turn. The enemy, once seemingly invincible, found themselves facing a wall of firepower unlike anything they had encountered before. Plasma cannons and energy shields, once the pride of the Council, were now augmented by human ingenuity. Rail guns that could punch through any armor, missiles that could outmaneuver any defense, and bombs that could crack open the very fabric of space-time. The enemy, for the first time in eons, began to falter. Their advance slowed, then stopped, then turned into a retreat as the combined forces of the Council and the humans pushed them back. But the war was far from over. The ancient enemy had not survived for countless millennia by being easily defeated. They had tricks and weapons of their own, terrible in their power and scope. As the galaxy burned and the body count rose, the human delegation knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. They had proven the might of human weapons, but to win this war, they would need more than just firepower. They would need the courage, the determination, and the indomitable will of the human spirit. For in the face of annihilation, it was the intangible strengths of humanity that would make the difference between victory and oblivion. With the integration of human weapons technology, the tide of the war had begun to turn in favor of the Galactic Council. The ancient enemy, once thought unstoppable, found themselves on the defensive for the first time in eons. However, the humans knew that their upgraded weapons alone would not be enough to win this war. The enemy was cunning and adaptable, and they had already begun to develop countermeasures to the new Human Council hybrid technology. Ambassador Stevens called a meeting with Captain Torres, Dr. Gupta, and the leaders of the Council races. They gathered in a war room, holographic maps of the galaxy floating around them, dotted with the glowing embers of besieged worlds. We've made progress, Stevens said, his voice grave, but we're still losing too many lives, too many worlds. We need a game changer. Dr. Gupta stepped forward, his eyes alight with a feverish intensity. I believe I have the solution, he said, tapping a few commands into a console. A new hologram sprang to life, a weapons system unlike any they had seen before. This, Gupta said, his voice hushed with reverence, is the Singularity Cannon. It harnesses the power of a collapsing star to create a burst of energy so intense it can obliterate an entire fleet in a single shot. The Council leaders murmured in awe and fear. Such power was beyond anything they had ever conceived of. Captain Torres, however, looked skeptical. "What's the catch?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "A weapon like that must have some serious drawbacks." Gupta nodded, his excitement tempered by grim reality. "You're right. The singularity cannon requires a tremendous amount of energy to fire. We'd need to drain the resources of an entire star system just to power it for one shot." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. To use such a weapon would be to sacrifice countless innocent lives, to snuff out worlds like candles in the wind. Ambassador Stevens broke the silence, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision before them. "We cannot become the very evil we fight against," he said, his eyes haunted. "If we resort to such tactics, we are no better than the enemy." Captain Torres nodded in agreement, but there was a hint of desperation in her voice. "But what choice do we have? If we don't use every weapon at our disposal, we risk losing everything." The debate raged on, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. In the end, it was decided that the singularity cannon would be built, but only as a weapon of last resort. Every other avenue would be explored first, every strategy employed to try and win the war without resorting to such catastrophic measures. As the grim work began, news arrived from the front lines that sent shockwaves through the Council. The ancient enemy had unveiled a new weapon of their own, a device that could rip apart the very fabric of reality, tearing holes in the universe that swallowed entire planets whole. The Galactic Council, already stretched to the breaking point, found themselves facing an existential threat unlike any they had ever encountered. Even with the might of human weapons technology behind them, they were losing ground fast. In a desperate gamble, Captain Torres proposed a daring plan: a direct assault on the enemy's stronghold, using every ship and every weapon they had in one glorious, all-out attack. It was a suicide mission, but it was also their only hope. As the fleets gathered and the troops prepared for what could be their final battle, Ambassador Stevens looked out at the stars, wondering how many of them would still be shining when all was said and done. The humans had changed the course of the war with their weapons, but now it would be the courage and sacrifice of every soldier, every pilot, every person who stood against the darkness that would determine the fate of the galaxy. In the face of annihilation, they would stand together, united in one final, desperate push for victory. And in that moment, the true power of the human spirit would be unleashed upon the stars. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council and the human forces stood ready, poised to strike at the heart of the enemy's stronghold. Ships of every size and configuration hung in the void of space, their weapons primed and ready. At the vanguard of the fleet was the human flagship, a behemoth of a vessel bristling with the most advanced weaponry the Alliance had to offer. On its bridge stood Captain Torres, her face set in grim determination. "This is it," she said, her voice echoing through the comm systems of every ship. "This is our chance to end this war, to save the galaxy from annihilation. It won't be easy, and many of us may not survive. But we fight not just for ourselves, but for every living being in the universe. Today, we are all warriors of the light." A cheer went up from the assembled crews, a roar of defiance against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. As the fleet moved forward, the enemy rose to meet them. Their ships were twisted things, jagged and asymmetrical, pulsing with an eerie, sickly light. At the center of their formation was a vessel larger and more terrible than any they had seen before, a nightmare made metal. The battle was joined, and the very fabric of space seemed to shudder under the onslaught. Beams of energy crisscrossed the void, missiles and torpedoes flew like swarms of angry wasps, and the hulls of ships on both sides buckled and shattered under the relentless barrage. The humans fought with a ferocity that stunned their allies, their upgraded weapons tearing through the enemy's defenses like hot knives through butter. Rail guns punched holes through warship hulls, singularity bombs collapsed entire squadrons into nothingness, and plasma lances seared through the darkness like the fingers of an angry god. But for every enemy ship that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The ancient foe had numbers on their side, and they threw themselves into the battle with a reckless disregard for their own lives. On the bridge of the flagship, Ambassador Stevens watched the carnage unfold with a heavy heart. Each lost ship represented hundreds, if not thousands of lives snuffed out in an instant. The cost of this war was already too high, but they had no choice but to keep fighting. Dr. Gupta, meanwhile, worked feverishly in the ship's weapons bay, trying to coax more power and efficiency out of the Singularity cannon. Each shot from the massive weapon drained the ship's reserves dangerously low, but each shot also vaporized an enemy capital ship in a blinding flash of light. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the tide was turning. The Human Council alliance was winning, but at a terrible cost. Ships lay broken and lifeless in the void, and the screams of the dying filled the comm channels. Just when victory seemed within reach, the enemy played their final, terrible card. The nightmare ship at the center of their fleet began to glow with an awful, pulsating light. It was the reality-ripping weapon they had used to destroy so many worlds, and now it was aimed directly at the heart of the Allied fleet. Captain Torres saw the danger and knew there was only one choice. With a silent prayer for forgiveness, she gave the order to fire the Singularity cannon at full power, directly into the heart of the enemy weapon. The resulting explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A blinding flash of light, a roar of sound that seemed to shake the very stars themselves, and then silence. When the light faded, the enemy fleet was gone, reduced to atoms by the power of the Singularity cannon. But the Allied fleet had not been spared. More than half their ships were gone, the rest damaged beyond repair. But they had won. The ancient enemy was defeated. The galaxy was saved. As the survivors limped back to their homeworlds, they mourned the fallen and celebrated the living. The humans had proven their worth 1,000 times over, their weapons and their indomitable spirit the key to victory. But as Ambassador Stevens looked out at the stars, he knew that this was only the beginning. For in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, there would always be new threats to face, new battles to fight, and humanity would be there, ready to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. The final battle was over, but the war had left deep scars across the galaxy. Countless worlds lay in ruins, their populations decimated by the ancient enemy's relentless onslaught. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of unity and strength, was a mere shadow of its former self. But even in the darkest of times, there was hope. The humans, who had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers, had proven themselves to be the saviors of the galaxy. Their weapons and their unwavering spirit had turned the tide of the war, and now they were looked upon with a mix of awe and gratitude by the surviving races. Ambassador Stevens, Captain Torres, and Dr. Gupta found themselves hailed as heroes, their names spoken with reverence in every corner of the galaxy. But they knew that their work was far from over. The task of rebuilding fell to them, and they threw themselves into it with the same determination that had carried them through the war. They worked tirelessly to help the shattered worlds of the Council rebuild, sharing their knowledge and resources freely. Dr. Gupta and his team of scientists worked to adapt human technology for peaceful purposes, developing new methods of energy production, food synthesis, and medical treatment that would help the galaxy recover from the ravages of war. Captain Torres, ever the soldier, took on the task of training a new generation of warriors. She knew that the galaxy could never let its guard down again, and she was determined to ensure that it would always have defenders ready to stand against any threat. Ambassador Stevens, meanwhile, worked to forge new alliances and strengthen old ones. He knew that the galaxy was stronger together, and he was determined to ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. As the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, the galaxy began to heal. Cities were rebuilt, populations rebounded, and a new sense of unity and purpose took hold. But even as life returned to a semblance of normalcy, the specter of war never truly faded. The ancient enemy had been defeated, but who knew what other threats lurked in the vast expanse of space? The humans, for their part, remained vigilant. They continued to innovate, to push the boundaries of what was possible with their technology and their ingenuity. They became the galaxy's shield, the first line of defense against any new danger that might arise. And yet, even as they stood ready to fight, the humans never lost sight of what truly mattered. They had learned the hard way that power alone was not enough, that true strength came from the bonds of friendship, the ties of community, and the unbreakable spirit of hope. As Ambassador Stevens looked out at the stars, he knew that the future was uncertain. There would always be new challenges to face, new enemies to confront. But he also knew that as long as the galaxy stood together, as long as there were those willing to fight for what was right, there was nothing they could not overcome. The humans had come to the stars as outsiders, as newcomers seeking to find their place in a vast and wondrous universe. But through their courage, their determination, and their unbreakable spirit, they had become something more. They had become the guardians of the galaxy, the defenders of the light against the darkness. And as long as they held true to that calling, as long as they stood united, there was no force in the universe that could stand against them. The war had been won, but the journey was far from over. For in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, there would always be new horizons to explore, new adventures to embark upon. And the humans would be there, ready to face whatever lay ahead, together. Years turned into decades, and the galaxy continued to thrive under the watchful eye of the human-led Galactic Council. The scars of the war had faded, but the memories remained, a constant reminder of the price of peace and the importance of vigilance. Ambassador Stevens, now an elder statesman, looked out at the stars from his office on Earth. His hair had grayed and his face was lined with the wisdom of a life spent in service to the greater good. Beside him stood Captain Torres and Dr. Gupta, their own faces reflecting the passage of time. "We've come a long way," Stevens said, his voice soft with reflection. "When we first stepped onto the galactic stage, we were nobodies, just another primitive species reaching for the stars. But look at us now." Torres nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "We showed them what humanity is capable of. We showed them the power of our weapons, yes, but also the power of our spirit, the power of unity." Gupta smiled, his mind no doubt racing with the countless innovations and discoveries he had spearheaded over the years. "And we've only just begun. Imagine what more we can achieve, what new heights we can reach, now that we stand as equals among the stars." As they spoke, a chime sounded, indicating an incoming transmission. Stevens activated the holographic display, and a familiar face appeared. It was Zorax, the former leader of the Galactic Council. But he was not the broken, desperate figure they had last seen during the war. Now he stood tall and proud, his eyes clear and his voice strong. "Ambassadors," he said, inclining his head in respect, "I come to you with news. News of a new discovery, a new frontier for the galaxy to explore." He told them of a remote region of space, far beyond the reaches of the known galaxy, a place of strange anomalies and uncharted wonders, where the very laws of physics seem to bend and twist. "We do not know what lies in this new frontier," Zorax said, his voice tinged with excitement and trepidation. "But we know that we must explore it, and we know that we cannot do it alone." He looked at the humans, his gaze filled with respect and trust. "We need you," he said simply. "We need your courage, your ingenuity, and yes, your weapons. For whatever dangers we may face in this new realm, we know that you will be there to stand with us, to fight for the future of the galaxy." Stevens, Torres, and Gupta exchanged glances, their eyes alight with the promise of new adventure. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and dangers beyond anything they had faced before, but they also knew that they were ready. Ready to stand together, to fight for what was right, to explore the vast and wondrous expanse of the universe. "We're with you," Stevens said, speaking for all of them. "Wherever this new frontier takes us, whatever challenges we may face, humanity will stand with the galaxy. Together." As the transmission ended and the holographic display faded, the three friends looked at each other, their faces filled with a mix of excitement and determination. They knew that the future was uncertain, that the path ahead was fraught with peril, but they also knew that as long as they had each other, as long as they held true to the ideals that had carried them through the darkest of times, there was nothing they could not overcome. The war had forged them into something more than just soldiers or diplomats or scientists. It had forged them into a family, bound by ties stronger than blood or steel. And as they set out to face this new frontier, this new chapter in the story of the galaxy, they knew that they did so not as individuals, but as part of something greater. They were the guardians of the galaxy, the defenders of the light against the darkness. And together, they would face whatever lay ahead, ready to fight, ready to explore, ready to embrace the endless wonders and possibilities of the universe. For in the end, that was the true legacy of humanity. Not just their weapons or their technology, but their unbreakable spirit, their unwavering courage, and their boundless capacity for hope in the face of the unknown. And with that legacy to guide them, there was no limit to what they could achieve, no end to the adventures that awaited them amongst the stars.